It is the definition of selfless.
She has so much energy and drive and vision.
Anna Eskamani is pro-small business.
She doesn't take any special interest big money.
As a Republican, I support Anna because she's drawing us all together and not trying to split us apart.
Anna is the best voice to help end gun violence in our community.
She's the leader of the state on reproductive rights.
She's the kind of leader I want to teach my daughter how to be.
Again, for people that are listening, we have a special guest today, Anna Eskamani, AnnaForFlorida.com. It's Anna for Florida on Twitter, Facebook, and everything else in the kitchen sink. You can see her usually every Friday around 4 or 5-ish o'clock. And she does an update for all the residents around Orlando, what's going on, protests, events in general. And she does have a great staff too. And shout out to Lauren and Madison for doing great work. Anna, thanks for coming on again. Greatly appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back.
All right, so we did have a legislative session that ended a little while back. Can you tell the viewers what got done? Obviously, the supermajority kicked ass and took no prisoners, whether we like that or not. But you did get some good things done, especially the diaper issue with a lot of people that are struggling, extremely expensive for people that have babies. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as you noted, it was a very difficult legislative session. Of course, if you're a MAGA Republican, you got what you wanted. Every type of community that we care about was under attack. Multiple policies pushed through that are making life harder for LGBTQ plus people, for women, for immigrants. We saw policies that go after not just the privatization and the book banning within kindergarten and 12th grade, but also higher education was directly impacted with House Bill 999, Senate Bill 266. Meanwhile, economic issues were overwhelmingly ignored. No solution when it comes to the property insurance crisis. The rent continues to be astronomical. And in fact, renters' rights were eroded this past session with the signing of House Bill 1417, which preempts any local rental protection ordinance, has now been nixed by the state of Florida. And you saw some really bad environmental policies. In fact, the one good environmental bill the governor vetoed that would have helped electrify state agency vehicles, move us away from fossil fuels towards EVs. I can only assume that for his Iowa caucus voters, such a policy is not popular. So with that said, you mentioned some of the success that we had. We fought really hard just in a defensive posture against these policies, really setting things up for the legal strategy, which we actually have had some strong legal wins, which I'm happy to talk more about, and more lawsuits are coming. But in the context of policy that we were able to accomplish, we were able to secure a permanent tax break on all children's diapers and adult incontinence products, which is a big deal and will save Florida families upwards of $100 million annually. So very proud of that. But of course, it's a small win in the context of some pretty bad fights.
And I want to talk about this. You brought up the issues of housing and rent, inflation still crushing Florida people in general, but also the homeowner insurance, which keeps getting worse and worse. I know you dabbled into some of these issues just now, but the homeowner insurance issue is crushing Floridians left and right. You guys had the special session. The governor did nothing on this issue. When I speak to his supporters, I still go out about that and say, this is a big issue. And these insurance companies just keep leaving and leaving. And if the companies that are there, you have to pay huge premiums, and it's incredible.
You got it. I mean, we had a special session that was very much focused on what the insurance industry wanted, not what is the best interest of consumers. And then on top of that, this past session, there was a major tort reform bill, which makes it close to impossible for anyone to take a company to court who might have wronged them through an act of negligence or gross negligence. And that is a huge imbalance when it comes to consumer rights compared to corporate power. And there's been a lot of debate over, well, it's the litigious environment of Florida that is making property insurance rates high. And that's why we need to make it more difficult for there to be lawsuits. And the irony is that, for a year now, that's been the case in Florida. The special session we had on property insurance was last May. It was a year ago, and nothing's gotten better. And then this past session, the tort reform bill was signed. And so, my thought too is, okay, Republicans, if this is really the solution, the end all be all, then where are the results? And, we haven't seen any results when it comes to these rates going down, despite all the giveaways that Republicans have facilitated towards the industry themselves.
Last time we spoke, you were being considered as Charlie Crista's running mate. This was a while back. But regardless of that, we've seen through, 2018, when you first got elected, Andrew Gillum, who I was a huge fan of, went to a lot of his rallies, voted for him twice in the Democrat primary, and the Democratic, as candidate against Governor Desantis, lost by 32,000 votes, 0.5%. We just saw in 2022, obviously, the Republicans are just racking up with voter registration. I know you're doing your part with People Power for Florida, and you guys are doing as much as you can. It doesn't seem like the establishment in Florida really gives a damn. The governor won by 1.5 million votes, 19%. Hillsborough goes, from Democrat with Andrew Gillum to Republican with DeSantis in 22. Osceola, Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade. This is unheard of for Democrats to lose these counties. What is the takeaway from this? Is the takeaway that more Floridians really agree with Governor DeSantis's values and Florida is really a red state now? Or is it just that the Democrats just suck, in plain English? I'm sorry to use that language, but it's really demoralizing as a person that's registered as a Democrat in the state.
It is demoralizing, but there's always space for hope. I mean, just looking at our election in 2022, District 42 had 11% greater turnout than the rest of Orange County, and 38% of NPAs voted for us. And when you look at just the breakdown of voter turnout, obviously we know that white voters tend to vote more than communities of color, which is one reason why, Democrats have to work really hard to reach our community. We have to show up for folks 24/7, not just in a transactional way when it's campaign season, because we are losing many people of color since our party is not working to focus on the needs of the working class. With that said, in our district, we actually had more white Democrats vote than white Republicans, which is a pretty big deal because, again, usually it's the opposite. So it is possible to inspire people to come out to vote. It's possible to win across the aisle, to appeal to NPAs. In our case, many Republicans vote for us too because they feel disconnected from the direction of the Republican Party today. And that's a common theme I've had with many Floridians, is that they feel like they don't have a home anymore. Actually, one of my constituents referred to himself as a mutt. He said, I feel like a mutt because I'm a longtime Republican and I just don't have a home anymore, right? So it's really interesting to kind of see that type of evolution. But at the same time, to your point, just the inability of the Democratic Party to appeal to diverse audiences and bring people into the fold. Looking towards the future, first of all, I think we have to give ourselves a sense of long-term goals, right? We're not going to solve this in one election cycle, especially when it comes to winning back the House. It's going to take multiple election cycles to get us back into a place where we have the ability to pass policies that take care of everyday people. At a statewide level, we need more infrastructure. We're building that at People Power for Florida, but the Democratic Party has been non-existent for, I would say, at least 4 to 6 years now. And hopefully under current leadership, we'll be able to see really what I hope are gains with voter registration. I think the job of the party is to focus on building up the base. That should always be the job of the party. And then, of course, you have other arms of the party infrastructure. Ruthless, focuses on recruiting women candidates. House victory and Senate victory focuses on recruiting candidates in their state legislative seats. You have local parties who should be not only amplifying voter registration efforts, but helping to recruit candidates for the local races, the county, the city, the school boards. That's not happening, right? There is not this flushed focus of targeted races, of collaboration. There's been a lot of decentralization over the years, mostly because of the ineffectiveness of these current institutions. So hopefully there can be a reset. But I'm thinking, 6, 8, 10 years down the line. I'm not thinking short term on this. I don't think we're going to rebuild the Democratic infrastructure in Florida overnight.
Just to be fair, though, in 2018, you had a candidate that was almost won the election with Andrew Gillum. And then also, obviously, Nikki Fried won. And, those races were extremely close, but people were winning. And that, and obviously the Senate at times, there was thought to be, wins there. There was the fake candidate scandal that's still somewhat going on.
Right.
We can play around with that. But to be fair, they were almost close with taking over the state Senate and winning the governorship, along with winning the agricultural secretary, which was one. My question
was, I would argue that 28 was definitely unique in the fact that it was the first cycle after Trump. So you had all this great energy, but where the Democratic Party failed was maintaining that momentum through multiple cycles. And there's a lot of reasons why that happened. But again, I can only speak to what I know. And I look at Central Florida, we never stopped organizing. Like, we kept our campaign office open all through multiple campaign cycles. I'm in the process right now of planning our kickoff for 2024, and it'll be in September of 2023. And like, most candidates don't do that type of ramp type of planning, and that's where we struggle, is that a lot of folks don't launch their campaigns until summer 2024, right? And it's like, that's too late. You really have to give yourself early planning, early money, and that's not easy. I mean, I'm already stressed out about fundraising, and it's not even an election cycle, right? And I stress myself out on having to raise funds, and a lot of candidates don't do that type of hustle, and you just need to in the context of Florida.
Well, to be fair, you're ahead of the curve on this. I mean, I'm not trying to blow you up.
It shouldn't be the norm. It shouldn't be the norm, or it should be the norm. Excuse me. I shouldn't be the exception. It should be the norm.
I do consider you one of the leaders of the Democratic Party in Florida, whether you like that or not. And I take that, I would take that as a compliment, because you're the one that's really winning and doing a lot of great things. I want to get into more of these topics, though. A lot of people are leaving the Democratic Party. I thought about leaving the Democratic Party as a person you don't know this, but I've talked about this with other people. I'm vaccine injured. And I don't agree with the governor. I think he's done horrendous, especially with the Disney issue, which really affects, Central Florida in my area. But regardless of that, people are sick of the corporate capture, the censorship with the Democratic Party, the lies about COVID-19 that are coming out now. I'm going to vote for RFK Jr. I know that's Kabuki theater to some people that are listening. Regardless of that, I think people are looking for someone like him that does believe in democratic values. And again, even with you on, I agree with you probably 80% of the time, but there's 20% we do disagree. That's fine. I'm still going to vote with you over a candidate that I only agree with 40 or 50% of the time. We need people that are going to go out to debate anyone, anywhere. And people are just sick of the culture war nonsense, the abortion stuff, the trans stuff. And we just want to talk about economic issues that help working people of all backgrounds. Who cares? Are you hearing that from people right now? Because there's a lot of people, as you said, that are leaving the Democratic Party in Florida.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you talk to, right? I mean, candidly, when I'm talking to members of the LGBTQ plus community, top of mind for them are these attacks. I mean, I'm in constant conversation, with trans constituents who are scared about their health and well-being. And, the context of abortion rights, if you are someone who's had an abortion or are reproductive age, that concerns you too. But I think, to your point, like, the economic issues are universal and impact and benefit everyone. And part of the challenge we have in Florida is that if I was the person who set the agenda, like, this, for example, if I was the speaker and I set the agenda, I wouldn't set the agenda on culture wars, right? I would set it on economic issues, on preventing corporate capture and closing corporate tax loopholes and putting money back into the pockets of Floridians. So part of the challenge, I was having this conversation actually with someone the other day, part of the challenge for Democrats in Florida is that we have to respond to the culture wars because there are demographics of our community that are impacted. You can't ignore that, right? But you can't let it take up all the oxygen in the room. You have to pivot and talk about other issues. You cannot lose sight of that. And I do think that if you were to eliminate culture wars completely and just looked at the voting record of some Democrats, you couldn't even tell they were Democrats or not, because the only thing that they distinguish themselves by are the more social issues. So we need to do everything all the time, which is not easy, right? So I look at my day to day. I'm actively, organizing everyday communities around issues that are hyper local, whether it's trying to reform the tourism development tax so we can spend that money on infrastructure that supports our residents, not just more tourism promotion. We're doing community cleanups, we're responding to constituent services on issues like rent hikes, on property insurance, on immigration. Like, my caseload is huge and I only have a staff of 2, right? So you're constantly doing that. But then you also are responding to what's happening in the legislature, and not just responding to the bills that come your way, but also now strategizing the legal perspective, and helping to gather plaintiffs, helping to reach out to folks who are impacted so they know what their rights are. So you have to do that work, right? And then the other side, you still have to campaign, you still have to fundraise, still have to, gather your petitions. So I will say that it's very challenging when you're in a supermajority GOP legislature, when you are underfunded, understaffed, and overworked, to kind of maintain that focus all the time. But to your point, if you ignore these economic issues, you're not really doing your job. Like, you have to focus on the bread and butter, and you have to make life better for people that really feel left out right now because they don't see themselves getting the attention they deserve. Their wages are stagnant, their cost of living is going up. And if you can't offer solutions, then you're not going to build their trust, and people are going to leave, to other means and other political alignment. So I definitely agree with you on all of that. And so we try really hard not to lose sight of the economic issues, but I will say it can be challenging because, the media wants to talk about the culture wars. I'll give you a quick example. So we did a press conference at our local diaper bank, and our goal was to amplify the diaper tax break, right? And it was such an incredible press conference. I mean, we were in the warehouse surrounded by diapers. We had 2 moms share their stories. The number of press that came was 0. Meanwhile, if I was doing something that was about, one of these culture wars, there would be an audience immediately. And that has been a pattern. Like, I remember I did a press conference last year on closing corporate tax loopholes. It was a virtual press conference. No press came. Right. And again, if it's on something that is more culture war-y, then the press are there. And a part of that too is the press corps has gotten smaller and smaller. And you don't really have reporters with expertise on economic issues. All our reporters are also just kind of sharing the latest trend. And that's hurting our democracy because we don't have strong reporting on economic issues or interest in that. Then the American public, all they see are the culture wars because, candidly, it's easier to report on that kind of stuff, I think, because the subject matter is not always super complex compared to something like tax policy.
I want to get on to these last 3 questions so we can let you go.
For sure. Sorry, I'm talking over here.
No. I just want to be gracious with your time. The abortion amendment, which I agree with. My stance on abortion might be a little different than yours, but it's somewhat similar. I think it should be legal and rare. Life of the mother, health of the baby, incest, rape, all that stuff should be included. I don't think most women go out and just say, hey, I want to have an abortion today. You worked at Planned Parenthood. You know this. Obviously, Planned Parenthood just isn't about abortion. There's a lot of contraceptive. There's all kinds of things there. It's good for the community. With that said, how is that abortion amendment going? I heard that there's about, getting close to 1 million, but it's only 600, 500,000. And it needs to be done by January. Is that correct?
February. So you're close.
February,
yeah.
Okay.
So our goal is to collect 1.3 million by February 2024. Technically, you need about 877,000, but we want to inflate our goal knowing that many will be tossed out. But to the heart of your question, we're doing very, very well. The momentum has been amazing. We've already collected 300,000 petitions and counting. About 80-some thousand are volunteer driven, which is really, really cool. So it's volunteers that are helping us get to our goals. And I think there's an overall consensus that if we get this on the ballot, we will win. But the challenge, of course, is overcoming Supreme Court review. The state Supreme Court is going to be reviewing our language now that we've hit that 250,000 threshold. And that'll be a big determiner of what we're able to actually do.
I'm willing to sign it. I'm going to sign it. I just think 6 weeks is firstly insane for anything.
It's wild.
Again, legal but rare. Again, women don't just go and run around getting abortions unless they're
It's a very personal decision that should be left between individuals and their doctors and their family, and not politicians.
Somebody wrote in this question since, you were coming on, just a quick answer on this, saying liberals say my body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but not when it comes to vaccines. What's your stance on that?
I think that no one wants or likes mandates. And in the context of COVID-19, with so much uncertainty around us, that led to, different administrations, whether it was Trump or Biden, to pursue different type of vaccine requirements. Because again, with the uncertainty, many people did not know what other options were available. But I think overarching, no one likes mandates. The one distinction I will say, though, is that pregnancy is not contagious. So I do push back when people, try to co-opt the my body, my choice rhetoric, because you just can't compare a pregnancy to a global pandemic. But I also understand, the disdain towards mandates. I think historically speaking, mandates are fairly un-American. We saw that with the Affordable Care Act when it came to mandates under that context. And so not something that, I push for myself as a state representative. I really prefer incentive opportunities. I think it was better when you try to, not change the quality of someone's life, but try to provide, different incentives to get people to consider the vaccine in the context of COVID. But with exceptions always. You always have to have exceptions, whether it's health reasons, religious reasons are protected, in the United States as well. And I think that there were some private actors who balanced that and did that well. But obviously, part of the schism in this country is rooted in the vaccine debate. And I do think, though, we need to be careful about the erosion of other well-established vaccines. I think I just saw in one state, vaccines around things like meningitis are being removed. And I would be really cautious about allowing the disdain towards the COVID vaccine to affect other well-established vaccines. My uncle actually died from complications with polio because he never got the polio vaccine in Iran. And he lived his entire life with a leg that did not work, where my grandmother actually made his pockets extra long so he could carry his leg as he walked. So I also would express caution in, that debate traveling into other well-established spaces of public health.
We're talking about bringing people together. We've talked a lot about the state of Florida, and we're, talking about all these culture war things which are important. And again, I don't want to say that the Democrats are just bringing up these culture wars, because the governor is, for sure playing into this he's running the state. It's his laws. It's his state legislature that is pushing through all this stuff. But we need to bring not only the state of Florida together, but the country together. I believe a lot of people are live and let live people. You don't bother me. I don't bother you. We're all for, a good environment, health care, housing. We all want these things. So how do we do that? Because there's all this culture war nonsense that is really drifting people away from each other. And Anna, just to end on this, I believe a lot of the people, the corporate people that are loaded with money, the millionaires and the billionaires, are trying to, pump up these culture wars to divide people left against right, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, all this stuff. Because again, like MLK said, he was trying to bring poor white people and poor black people together for unionization. This is more than, just the March on Washington. And they killed him before he was able to do that. So, these people are playing this up because they don't want us together. They don't want to build a better America. They wanted to just have the fight so they can screw us left and right like they are.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with you. I think that there's a lot of money behind the scenes and pumping up a lot of these debates. In particular, you look at organizations like the Manhattan Institute, the Heritage Foundation. I mean, these are all different types of conservative think tanks that are well funded because they know that they can not only distract Americans from economic injustices, but they can also make money off at the same time. You know, Desantis is now sending out a fundraising email about the renters' rights he just repealed for people, but he is sending out emails about what's happening at the border. He's sending emails about his attacks on LGBTQ plus people. He just did this bizarre, video on Twitter trying to brag about how much of a homophobe he is. And so I think it's important for us to also know where this is coming from. I mean, it's overwhelmingly coming from the right. It's not the left. And unfortunately, again, we have to respond to it because we have constituents who need us to. There are constituents who feel targeted, whether they're people of color, whether they're immigrants, whether they're LGBTQ plus, whether they're women. So I can't ignore these issues. But again, I think it's important that we don't let it take up all the airtime and whenever possible, pivot towards those everyday issues that impact every person. So you have to fight back, but you also can't lose sight of the proactive message and the proactive promise to the American people, what we can deliver when you elect Democrats. And with that said, it continues to be clear to me there are many politicians out there who don't actually want to solve these problems. They want the culture wars to persist because it benefits them, benefits their strangle to power. I mean, Governor DeSantis' entire rise to power has been through chaos, through divisive politics. But ironically, when he campaigned in 2022, he didn't campaign on these issues. Most of his ads were about the diaper tax break that Democrats passed, right? So I think it's important to make note that when appealing to his base, he leans on these extreme policies. When appealing to a general electorate, he doesn't. And I think that speaks to, this very transactional game. We're going to throw, red meat at some groups of the population and then not others. And don't let that divide and conquer mentality work. Please, do your research, talk to your neighbors, don't go into those echo spheres. I really benefit from exposure to Republican friends because then we can have these really thoughtful discussions and debates versus, fall into these cycles of just empty rhetoric.
Right. And I appreciate you coming on. You're always great when you come on. And I hope people that are listening, if they have a couple of bucks, I know it's a tough time, I would donate to Anna. I have donated to her in the past. We'll do in the future. Anna Eskamani, AnnaForFlorida.com, and then Anna for Florida on Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else. Anna, thanks so much. And keep up the great work. You are amazing.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Anna. Bye-bye now.